Okay, so this week is Parshas Chayei Sara. Really, really interesting parsha. Don't I say this every week? It's all about the life of Sara. She is passing away in the beginning of this week's Torah portion. It says that Sara died after 100 years, 20 years, and 7 years. That's how long she lived, and she passed away. And the Torah portion starts off that Abraham came. Sara died in Kiryat Arba, which is Hebron, which is where Chani just told us she was at. So it says, Vatama Sara b'Kiryat Arba. Sara died in Kiryat Arba, hu Hebron, which is Hebron. Vayavo Avram lispo l'Sara. And Avram comes to mourn for Sara, to eulogize Sara. And there's a fascinating explanation on this, and that is the Zohar that tells us that Sara is compared to the body and Abraham is compared to the soul. And it says, how do we see this in the Torah, in the words of the Torah? Vatama Sara, which is the body, passed away. B'Kiryat Arba, in Kiryat Arba is how much? 4. Hu Hebron, which is Hebron, which also means the word mechubar, which means joined. So it's telling us, Sara, the body, passes away. What is Sara? Sara is this body, which is composed of 4. There's 4 different elements that the body is composed of. Well, I'll tell you what they are in a minute. These 4 elements are, Hu Hebron, are mechubar. They're connected to each other. So the body with these 4 elements that are connected, which is what makes up the body, the 4 different elements that make up the physical body, she passed away. And so Abraham is coming, the soul is coming to eulogize her, to mourn for her. And why is the soul coming to mourn for the body? Because even after the soul leaves the body, there's still this connection. The soul is still connected to the body. And that is why, by the way, when we go to pray at the caver, at the gravesite of holy people, the soul of that holy person is still somehow connected to their physical body. Even parents, or loved ones, you go and you we have the custom of, if there's a wedding, you'll go and you'll put the invitation there, or you'll invite the parent to come to your wedding, because we know that at a wedding is when all the people, all your predecessors who are connected to you come and are there, and they're present at the chuppah. It's a very special time. You can, if you're in tune, you would actually feel the energy of these people, that they're actually coming there to celebrate with you. So you actually invite them. Where do you invite them? You go to the caver, you go to the gravesite, and that's where you invite them.
Is this before? Like right before?
It could be like a week before. It could be any time, like before. Yeah, you're making a wedding. Yes, yes, that's what you would do. You would go there. You'll see sometimes even in the Rebbe's, by the Rebbe's caver, there's people who will leave invitations there. This is like our way of inviting them and saying, please join us at the simcha. If you need to go and request something, from someone who passed away, a father, a mother, or someone who's related to you, who you're connected with, you would go to the caver, to the gravesite, and you would ask there for them to intercede on your behalf, to pray on your behalf up on high. But where do you go? You go to the gravesite, because we know that people who have passed away, who've passed along, are still connected to us, and they still see us, and they still see what we're doing. They've just gone higher. But where is that connection? Where is that place where you actually connect to them? It's actually at the gravesite. It's interesting, because soon after my father passed away, I wasn't going to even share this, it just hit me right now. Soon after my father passed away, we were talking about going for the Shloshim, and I had this dream about him, with him, and it was the weirdest dream. We were walking right by where he was buried, and he's walking holding my hand, and I'm saying, Daddy, isn't this so strange that you're coming with me to this place? And he says, don't worry, I'm not there anymore, so it's okay. So it was just such an interesting dream. But the point is, the gravesite is someplace where there is this connection. They're obviously not there physically anymore, but the physical body is still connected to the soul. So this is what it says. So Avram is coming to eulogize Sarah, to lispo, to mourn for Sarah. The soul is coming to mourn for the body who has passed away. We said the body is Sara, and the body is composed of Kiryat Arba, this conglomeration of four things that are mechubar, that are all connected, that are all joined. What are those four elements? So there's four elements in our world that really comprise everything. Every physical reality is comprised of these four energies, if you want to call it. And what are these energies? We have ruach, which is wind, eish, which is fire, mayim, which is water, and afar, which is earth or dust. So these four parts, four different elements, come together to compose the person. And if you think about it, we are all ruach, which is wind, eish, fire, mayim, water, or afar, or earth, people. And let's talk about these different kinds of people. And most of us are made up of a composition, a conglomeration, a mechubar, a joining in some way of all of them. So this is like the energy enneagram of how your personality is based on these four elements according to the Kabbalistic sources. So what is ruach? What is somebody who's a wind kind of person? So a wind type of person would be somebody who's very spontaneous, moving with the wind, very flighty, but also very easygoing. There's always the negative and the positive for each of the characteristic traits. A person who's a very ruach kind of person is somebody who's very easily to intermingle with others. They're a windy kind of person, but they're not so settled, right? They're very easygoing. They can change from one thing to the next, but they're not so settled. An eish personality, a fiery personality, is a personality that has a lot of personality, a lot of passion. They're very determined. They have tremendous amount of passion in what they're doing, a lot of energy, but they can also be somebody who is, on the downside, somebody who gets angry. Exactly, that's the eish personality. The mayim personality is someone who's more calm, peaceful, just like water. Maybe a people-pleasing kind of personality. Maybe somebody who's more into pleasure, into their own pleasure, right? These are what a mayim personality would be. An afar personality, earth personality, would be somebody who's earthy, a little heavy, intellectual maybe. Could be somebody who also gets down and depressed, right? Afar is earth, pulling down to the earth, depressed. So we're all parts. The body is composed, our physical body is composed of all these four elements, and this is what comprises our own emotional personalities of who we are. And all of us are a mixture of all these four character traits. And we could be all four character traits. You're laughing because you're thinking
I'm trying to
see yourself in someone. Right. So you might be like, 50% of one, and another 40 of another, and a 30 of another, and 10 of another. And this is what makes you. These are all parts of you. And it's hard to put together, or maybe even different times of days, you're different personalities, different parts of it. Maybe in the morning, you're more of a morning person, or maybe at night, you're more of a night person, which would indicate who you are. But all of us are made up of these four different elements in our physical bodies and who we are. And these four types are what brings our emotional characteristics as well. So these are the four parts. This is why it's called Kiryat Arba, that Sarah's body was made up of these four different parts, just like every body is made up, because Sarah represents the body and Abraham represents the soul. So interestingly, the first time I saw this, I was like, wow, that's very interesting. Women represent the body and a man represents the soul. And then yet it says, we did in last week's Torah portion, that it said, Kol asher tamar lecha Sara shma b'kola. God says to Avram, when they had this one argument that they had about Yishmael, and Sarah's like, he's out. He's hurting my son, whether spiritually or whether physically. He's out. Get him out of the house. And Avram didn't want to listen. And God himself had to intervene in this one argument that you see that this perfect couple had. And God says, listen to her, right? And I always joke that we read this Rosh Hashanah because every man has to do the whole year. You want a good year? It's telling us how to have that good year. But why is it, if Abraham is the soul and Sarah is the body, why is the pasuk telling us everything that the body tells you, listen to her? What does that mean? What does it mean that you should listen to the body? Right? We think that Judaism is a religion that we always talk about our soul and being in touch with our spirituality. And here we're talking about being in touch with the physical body. And that's what we love about Judaism. It always takes every idea and it turns, especially Hasidus, it takes the idea and it turns it upside down so you can see it inside out from all the different elements and all the different parts to it. So how do we understand this? So first of all, the Baal Shem Tov talks about the pasuk that says, there's a verse in Exodus that says, Ki sir'echa mor sonecha, when you see the donkey of your enemy, rovetz tachas mas'o, it's having a hard time, it's struggling under its burden, v'chaldalta me'azovlo, are you going to think that I do not want to help him? Azov ta'azovlo, you should surely help him. So the pasuk seems to be saying something very simple. If you see your enemy's donkey, and it's under a big load, it's a heavy load, and it's struggling, it's such a heavy load that so much is on the donkey. It's not the straw that broke the donkey, but it's this whole burden that's breaking the donkey. And you might think, like, I'm not going to help him because this is my enemy, right? Why should I help my enemy? And it says you should help him. You should definitely go and help him. So that's the plain meaning of the verse. The Baal Shem Tov takes this verse and he turns it kind of again on its head. And what does he say? He says the word chamor, which means donkey, is also the same word for chumrius, which means materiality. When you are looking at the material reality, you might think that the material reality is something that's a complete enemy to you. This is an enemy to me. I'm supposed to be a spiritual person. I have a neshama. I'm a spiritual entity. And I have to look at physical reality like, it's not for me. I have to stay away from it, right? This is what a person might think. Like, in order to be a good Jew, maybe I have to look at material reality and look at it and say, this is not for me. I have to stay away. This is an enemy. This is something that I have to this is something that's going to tempt me and pull me in the wrong way. And the Baal Shem Tov says, no, that's an incorrect way to look at it. We cannot look at our bodies and we cannot look at physical reality as this is something that's bad. But physical reality needs to be looked at as something that we're here to use. We're here to utilize because God created us as neshamas in a physical body. And so all of physical reality has to be seen as something that we can use and cherish if we can use it in a proper way, in a way to serve God. And that is why we see every single mitzvah, or almost every single mitzvah that we do, is done with a physical thing. Like we take a mezuzah and we put it up. It's a physical piece of parchment that we're putting up. Or we take tefillin and we wrap it around our hands. We're taking something physical, and we're doing something with it physically. Shabbat candle, same thing. We take a candle and we light it. We're not saying we're going away from physical reality. We're saying the opposite. We're taking physical reality and we're using it. We're sublimating it. We're making it something that we can use in a positive way. And even the mitzvot, like you think, the mitzvah like Ahavat Hashem, which is a constant mitzvah, loving God, Yirat Hashem, fearing God, knowing God, Das Hashem. These are constant mitzvot that we always have, that we have to know God, we have to love God, we have to fear God. Even these mitzvot, you think, oh, well, that I'm doing with my neshama, I'm doing that with my soul. And we say, no, 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 no. What are you loving God with? Your physical heart. What are you knowing God with? Your brain. These are all, you're using your physical body for even these mitzvot that are the most unphysical, right? Even these unphysical mitzvot, like fearing God, loving, being in awe of God, loving God, knowing God, even those mitzvot we do with our body. So we have to treasure our body, because ultimately it's our body, it's with our body and with the physical reality that we do mitzvot. Now that doesn't mean that you can allow your body to tempt you. That doesn't mean that you can allow the physical reality to tempt you and that you become so immersed in physical reality that you go down with it. But no, you take physical reality, you take material reality, and you elevate it. How do you elevate it? By using it for positive things, by using it for mitzvot. And so much so that we see that the Zohar tells us something phenomenal, that Abraham and Sara had a foretaste of the future time of the Messianic era. And what does it say will happen in the Messianic era? It says right now, the soul vitalizes the body. The soul gives vitality to the body. If the soul, God forbid, leaves the body has no more life. The body is dead, right? In the time to come, it says that it will be the opposite. And it's very hard to understand this, to even fathom it. But it says the body will give vitality to the soul. And from this we see that the physical body itself has some holiness to it, in some way even a stronger holiness than the neshama. Because the neshama is a part of God, and it's the spiritual thing that has descended to this world. But the body is a physical thing. And this physical thing is saying, I am my own self. I am a person independent of God. And this independent person of God, the so to speak independent of God, is then following God. And that's the greatest revelation of God in this world. Whereas something that seems like it's saying, I'm my own person, I'm independent of God, is then serving God and taking its own feelings of independence to actually find God and bring God into this world. And that is really the ultimate. How we take physical reality and we take things that seem like they're not spiritual, they're the antithesis of spirituality. They're the opposite of holiness. They're the opposite of finding God, and we find God even in them. That is the greatest revelation of God, that we're even able to find godliness in something that seems so distant from Him, that we take that physical reality and we show, no, this isn't different than God. This isn't separate from God. This is a part of God too. It doesn't look like it's a piece of God. It looks like it's screaming the opposite. It looks like a person is saying, I am me, and everything that I'm doing is me and me alone and not God. And you take that person, and that person acknowledges, no, what I'm doing is God. And the food that's there and the materiality, the physical reality that seems to scream it's independent of God, is exactly what I'm going to take to use to bring God into this world and make God comfortable in this world. And that's what every mitzvah does. We take a physical thing, we take a piece of cake that we could be using as temptation, and we say a blessing on it. We say a bracha on it. We take everything physical, we take gold and money and use that money. We give charity from the money. So the money that we could be used in a way that takes us away from God, we're specifically taking that thing and saying we're using that for God. And this is true for every single mitzvah that we have. We take the physical reality and use that physical reality for God. And that is really the greatest revelation of God in this world. And that's why it says that Abraham comes to eulogize and to mourn for Sarah. The soul is coming to mourn for the body, because the body, in a sense, is on a higher level, because it is revealing that God is here in the world, even in the physical reality. So it's a little bit of a deep topic, right? We got that? Okay. So it's so interesting how Judaism, as soon as you think you got it, it like turns you right upside down. You think, okay, I'm supposed to be a spiritual person, take away the physical, get myself away from the physical, and now, oh, wait, the physical is even higher, right? Takes it and turns it totally upside down. But that's really what every mitzvah is. We use physical reality to get close to God, because God created this physical world. He didn't just create us in the spiritual world, but he created us here in this physical world. And so here in this physical world, we in bodies are going to serve God. Okay, the next thing that it tells us is that Sara lives for 127 years. And the reason why it says she lives for 100 years and 20 years and 7 years, Rashi says, because all of her years were equally perfect. Kulan shavin latova. They were all equal for good. And the question here is, what does that mean? They're all equally good. I mean, if you look through your own life and you look through different stages of your life, can you honestly say that you were stagnating the same at all times? We go up, we go down, we go up and down. What does it mean to be equal? I mean, even Sara, she didn't grow up knowing Torah. She grew up as a little kid, right? She grew up in a home of idolatry. So what does it mean? When she was young, she was equally perfect, equally good? What is it trying to tell us? And, different times we hope that we grow and we become more wise people, we become more kind people, more selfless people. That's what a human being is. What does it mean that all her years were equally good? Any ideas? Any thoughts? So what does it mean when something is equally good? It means that you use those opportunities that you have, you learn from them. It doesn't mean she was always perfect. It means that you use your opportunities, you use your failures even. You use the challenges in your life. You use the difficult times in your life. You use the times that you made mistakes in your life, but you use them to grow. And if you use them to grow, then that mistake is no longer a failure. That failure is no longer a mistake. It's something that you're using to become a greater person. And I think this is such a important idea that we need to really internalize. We see later on in the Parsha, we're introduced to Rivka, who's again called this rose among thorns. How she grew up in an environment full of thorns, full of immorality, full of corruption. Her own brother is someone who was a swindler, Lavan, who switched his own daughters later on. Her father the whole family was such a rotten family through and through. And the whole place that she grew up in, Haran, was called Haran because it was Haron Afshal Olam. It was the place of God's anger in this world. It was such an immoral, corrupt place. And yet Rivka was this rose among thorns. She was this beautiful rose, this beautiful tzaddikas, this beautiful woman who felt like she wanted something good in her life. She sought something better than this. And what do we see about Rivka, though? We see, and we're going to talk about this next week in next week's Parsha, but this is very much related to what we see about Sara as well. And that is the idea that we don't need to take our mistakes, our difficulties, our challenges, and say we're leaving it. That's not what life is about. It's not about looking at your past and saying, oh, that was my past. I'm a completely different person now. It's great that you're a different person. It's great that you've grown, and it's great that you've become a higher person. But take your past and use it for your own growth. Don't ignore the past. You were put in the past situation specifically because this is what you needed. And so there's nothing to be embarrassed about your past, about what you've done, about mistakes you made. If you use those mistakes, if you utilize those as opportunities to learn from and to grow from and to become who you are, then your past is not something that you need to say, I'm leaving it and this isn't who I am. This is not part of me. Your past has made you into who you are. Your days have made you into who you are. So Sarah's days made her, not because she was perfect, but she learned from those experiences to grow from those experiences. And that's why each of her years were equally beautiful and equally for the good, because those mistakes or fallings that you make, or times that you failed, those are used in order to grow. And that is the greatest thing that we can do, right? I think that's such an important concept for us, because sometimes, we look at things that we've done and we say, like, I'm turning a new page and I don't want to be associated with that part of me. And the real answer is, once you've grown, that's okay. The part of you is also okay. That was meant to be. And if you can accept that part of you and who you were at that time and how you've become who you've become as a result of it, then you're a much fuller person, a real whole person, and spiritually as well. You've taken those ideas and those challenges and you've grown from it. And that is really the ultimate.
Can I ask a question? What
Sure.
about people that are stuck in the same situation and they never learn and they never grow from it? What does that mean? Like, I know Hashem has a purpose, so does he constantly give the same situation or put you in a bad situation, but you're still in the same situation?
So maybe you really need to, there's like what you've had to accomplish from that situation, you haven't yet accomplished.
Yeah.
You're still in there because this is part of your soul's growth in this world. Yeah. This is part of what you need to go through. And you feel like, okay, I've already done this, but maybe the growth isn't complete.
I know somebody who's going through that for so many years, and no matter how many times I'll talk to this person, they're still in the same spot, and
Right.
it's painful.
It's painful.
To watch.
Yeah, it is painful.
And this person is like, I think 56 years old already.
Wow.
So, I mean, it's been going through this vicious cycle, and everything is about money, and everything is about, he never got married because of that. And you watch it, and you wonder, like, okay, so Hashem is constantly putting you in a different situation, and you're still not changing.
Right. Yeah, it's hard, especially to see somebody going through that. It is hard.
But you're saying that Hashem is waiting for you to turn the page, or?
Yeah, it's an opportunity for you to turn the page, and hopefully the person will do that. I mean, sometimes we don't accomplish in our lifetime what we're meant to be doing, so we come back. We come
back. You never got married. You never ended up having children.
But again, like maybe part of what he's going through is part of the challenge of what his neshama also has to go through. Like maybe it didn't need to get to that completion. Maybe it just needs to get the little, like maybe internally there is some movement, even though you don't see it, even though the movement isn't as much as you'd like to see, so the person hasn't completely changed. But maybe there is some movement, and maybe all that little movement is all that he needed.
Or maybe all that he could do.
Or all that he could do.
But he's still here.
Yeah.
So that means he always has the opportunity to do better.
Yeah.
Like if you have that opportunity to, the people that are in your life, you turn around and you say to them, like if he has someone in his life, you say, I love you more today than I loved you yesterday. If you do something like that, then you have another opportunity to make it better. So he's alive. He has an opportunity to do it better.
That's right.
Right. And maybe his challenge in life is just to fight that. And he's fighting it as best as he can. And that's constantly what he needs to be doing.
Yeah.
So we don't know. I mean, we could sit here in judgment and say, oh, he's not really doing what he has, but maybe that's all he needs to be doing.
Okay.
And we may say, yes, he should get married and he should have kids and he should do this, but
Maybe he
If there's-
can't.
maybe that's not his purpose in life. Maybe his purpose is just to do that inner growth.
Right. Wow.
Exactly.
Or maybe not.
Right.
That's very true.
Yeah, exactly. Which really brings us to, it says that Chava, when she was in the Garden of Eden, she desired to have this selfhood. She was so encompassed by God and God's vision of everything that this is what the Nachash, the snake, tells her. Like, take this, you'll have this selfhood, you'll have a little bit of this ego so that your decisions will be more important, more impactful, because it will be yours. It won't be just what God wants of you. You'll feel a sense of selfhood. That's what Chava wanted, right? That's what she was desiring. That's what it was saying to her, because the temptation then came from the outside. The temptation didn't come from inside. It wasn't an inner voice that was calling her. And she wanted it to be an inner voice that was calling her, so that when she overcomes that inner voice, it's so much more meaningful to her that she's done that. And she got that. And that's why we were thrown out of the Garden of Eden. And we have that voice very strongly within us right now, right? And then Noach also sought joy. He also he saw what happened, that when this feeling of selfhood is so strong and the feeling of ego is so strong, what happens? Look at the whole generation of the Mabul. The feeling of selfhood and ego is so strong that it destroys everybody. So as soon as he went out of the teva, of the ark, what did he do? The first thing that he did was he got drunk. And what was his getting drunk? It was, I want to transcend myself. I want to transcend my ego. I want to be drunk so I'm not so involved in my ego. And where did that lead? To no good places. And then comes Sara, and Sara rectifies, it said, the sin of Chava, and really of Noah, but really the sin of Chava. How did she do this? By realizing that it's not about me gaining this selfhood. It's not then about transcending the selfhood, but we all have this selfhood. It's about a service for something greater than ourselves. And that's what she did in all her years, this service for something greater than ourselves. It's not about leaving our ego. It's not about leaving who we are, but it's about taming our ego, putting our ego in a place so that we have a higher mission and a higher goal in life. And her higher mission was with Abraham, going out there, teaching Torah, teaching monotheism to the world. Later, when she had Yitzchak, her mission was then teaching Yitzchak, raising a child who would understand this. So her purpose in life was not about myself and my ego, even my spiritual self, right? Sometimes we feel like spiritually, like Chava must have felt, I want that voice to be inside of me because then I'll be a greater person when I overcome it. And what happens is she fell because of it. So sometimes we try to achieve even a spiritual greatness, but it's still about ourselves. It's still about me. And Noach also, he was trying to transcend himself, but it was still about him. What Sara teaches us is, if you really want to overcome your ego in a negative way, be in service for something greater than yourself. It's not about leaving your ego, but it's about using your ego for something greater than what you are. Have a mission in life, have a purpose in life that's greater than you. That is the greatest way that we can find our joy in life and our purpose in life. And that brings us to the very first marriage that we see in this week's Torah portion, which is, of course, Yitzchak getting married to Rivka, right? The first Jewish marriage that's mentioned here. And it's very interesting because the shidduch, the shadchan in the marriage, the matchmaker in this marriage is Eliezer, right? Avram sends Eliezer, the shadchan, to find this, get me a girl for Yitzchak, get me someone from Yitzchak. And Eliezer leaves Avram's house, and it says the same day he left that day, and the same day he arrived in Haran, which really was a journey of some distance, yet he came there the same day. And this teaches us a fabulous lesson. Rivka at this point was ready to be married. And as soon as she was ready to be married, remember we looked at last week's Torah portion and we said, Vatitzchak Sara Bikirba, that as soon as there was this concept of Yitzchak, there was this Rivka Bikirba, there was this Rivka that also developed. As soon as Abraham senses that somewhere in the world there is this soulmate ready to marry Yitzchak, he senses it spiritually. The moment he senses it, he sends Eliezer to go find her. Up until now, she was too young. But the moment she's mature enough to marry Yitzchak, he senses it, and he sends Eliezer to go find her. There was no purpose in sending Eliezer before she's ready, but the moment she's ready, he sends him. And the moment that she is ready, that same day, Eliezer reaches there, because there was a miraculous, God made a miracle and shortened his way, and Eliezer got there that same day in order to take Rivka out of her situation, being among the thorns, being in this environment that was a negative environment, to take her and to bring her to Yitzchak, to this beautiful spiritual environment. And this really teaches us, Yeshuat Hashem keharef ayin. The salvation from God is like the blink of an eye. It can come as fast as the blink of an eye. Sometimes we're in our situation and we feel like we feel so helpless. And we have to remember, God's salvation can come like the blink of an eye. It can come like that, so quickly. So much so that God can create miracles to make it happen so quickly. So Rivka needed to be in her environment for this amount of time until she was ready to marry Yitzchak. But the moment she's ready to marry Yitzchak, the moment that she's finished the time period that she needs to be in this negative environment, that same day, Eliezer is already there at her doorstep, finding her. And with ourselves as well, this can bring us comfort, and this goes back to what you were saying about this person who's in a difficult situation. As soon as we are in a situation where we're in a difficulty, because this is something that our soul needs to go through. The moment our soul no longer needs to go through this, or the moment that we've reached whatever realization we need to reach, or come to whatever we need to come to, that moment, Yeshuat Hashem keharef ayin. The salvation can come like the blink of an eye. We're not going to stay in a situation of difficulty any longer than what our soul needs to stay in. And this is why we see that as well, when the Jewish people were in Egypt, as well, the Yeshua came, the salvation came fast, much faster. God made the redemption happen so much quicker because they were ready. They had accomplished what needed to be done. And we know this for all situations when we're going through something as well. We have to just remember, Yeshuat Hashem keharef ayin, the salvation from God can be as quick as the blink of an eye. As soon as we're ready to get out of there, God will be there to take us out. Okay, so then we see that they meet at this, Eliezer meets Rivka where? Where is she? By the well. Okay, why the well? Anyone know why a well?
She was,
Yes, she went out, right? So the truth is, it was kind of miraculous because it says Besuel, her father, was a very rich man. So it was really just divine providence, hashgacha pratis, that she happened to go out. She never went out to gather water. Just that day she happened to go out. And that is where she meets Eliezer. And the well seems to be a really good place for shidduchim, for matches to happen. We see Eliezer or Yitzchak with Rivka. Who else do we see at a well? Huh?
Rachel.
We see Rachel. We see later on Yaakov comes to the well and he meets his destined. Rachel is there and they fall in love right there at the well. And anyone else? Moshe. Yes, we see Moshe later on when he's escaping Egypt. He meets Zipporah at the well. So it seems like the well is a really good meeting place.
We should suggest that.
Yeah, exactly. We have to create more wells.
There is.
There's a well
Yeah.
here?
By the Shulchan house, yeah.
Oh, wow.
Yes, I'm gonna tell her. Nancy Halford asked for,
What?
Auntie Halford asked for a well.
Nothing of privacy there, but.
No, she put it on the chat. No, I'm saying
No,
she.
saying if anyone wants to.
No, she asked if there's a well, if someone wants to stop and buy a well.
Oh,
for sure.
interesting.
By the Shulchan, by Morningstar?
Yeah.
Interesting.
Oh,
Okay, so yeah, so the well is a very, a place that is very good for matches to take place. And let's think about why. What is a well? A well is that you've dug, and because you dug deep, the water has come out. And this is very much reminiscent of a relationship. What is a relationship? We're saying The water is there in the well, right? You have to dig deep though to find it. So in every relationship, we all have soulmates. We have who our destined soulmate is, but we need sometimes to dig deep in order to find that soulmate. You can dig deep. And sometimes you take a well and you can actually stuff it up, right? You can cover it up. And that is true in our relationships as well. We can take our relationship and stuff it up. We can throw in all kinds of garbage in there and there's no more any water. But the point is to try to reveal that water, to uncover that water, to dig deep and discover that water, the water that is there already. And what is water? Water is something that you pour water over a surface, it covers everything, it joins everything, it fuses everything. And the idea of water in our relationships as well is to bring us together with that flexibility, cover over my needs, your needs, this one, that one, me, you, all that struggle, cover it over with something higher, with a higher mission and a higher purpose that covers it up, which is our devotion to a higher lifestyle that's devoted to God. And that is why the word be'er also comes from the words that we say every day, biyadcha afkid ruchi, which means in your hands I entrust my soul. We say to God, God, in your hands I entrust my soul to you. And if we look at our lives in that way, that our lives are entrusted to God, that our lives are what God wants of us, then our squabbles and fights and struggles in our relationships become easier because we're looking at our lives as centered on something holier than that.
So the acronym of Biyadcha Afkid Ruchi is Be'er.
Is Be'er, yes. If we take the word Be'er, it's Biyadcha Afkid Ruchi, the acronym of those three words. Exactly, thank you. Okay, so they're at the well, and what happens? They're standing at the well, and Eliezer sees Rivka, and he says, I'm doing this kindness test. I'm going to see if this woman is really kind. The person who Yitzchak needs to marry is going to be somebody who is kind, because Judaism very much values kindness. And Rivka's standing there, and she sees this man asking her for water. And what does she think? So there's really, when someone asks you for something, there's really a few different reactions that you can have. The first thing that you can say is, does he really need help? He's asking me to give him water? Like, he looks like a very capable, able-bodied person, and he's asking little me to give him the water? Does he really need my help? But she doesn't ask that. She's only 3, exactly. She's a young girl at this time. The second thing that a person could ask is, there's a lot of people here. Why me? Why is he asking me? And moreover, I already put the jug back on my shoulder. I got my water that I needed. I already put it back on my shoulder. Let him ask somebody else who didn't put the jug, whose jug is still down. Let him ask them if he really needs it, right? The third thing a person could say, okay, he really needs it, and he's asking me, but let him at least help me help him. Let him at least help me with helping him. Let him take the jug off of my shoulder. It's considerably heavy. Let him help me take it off my shoulder so that I can help him, right? And then the fourth thing, which was remarkable, is she says, not only is it me, and not only do I realize that he needs help, and that I'm the one that needs to help him, and that he doesn't need to help me in helping him, but I'm also going to give water to all his animals as well. And Rivka said, obviously this man is not able to help himself. Maybe he's in pain. Maybe his hands are hurting him. Maybe there's something that I don't see. So if I don't see it, then he's in pain and he can't use his hands. He needs my help. He can't help me in helping him. And if he needs the water for himself, then obviously he also needs the water for all his animals as well. And that was really the kindness test. Okay. The next thing that we have, and we're time is really running away, is the presents. I just want to talk about the presents that he gives her. And this also teaches us something so important about marriage. So Eliezer presents Rivka with two presents. One of them is a golden ring, and it tells us that the golden ring weighed a half a shekel. And the second thing that he gives her is two bracelets that were weighed 10 shekels in weight. So the first present is this golden ring that he's giving her, which is a half a shekel. And the reason why it's a half a shekel, because it was reminiscent of a half a shekel. If you remember when we were learning, the half a shekel for that was given to the Mishkan, which is given as charity, the half a shekel that each person needed to give. And that was the mitzvah of charity. The mitzvah of charity is considered equal to all the mitzvot, because it's the one mitzvah that you do with your entire body, with your blood and sweat. You earn a livelihood with everything. You work so hard to earn a livelihood, and then you're giving the money that you earned, that worked so hard for, you're giving it to somebody else. So that includes the totality of all mitzvot. That's the most important mitzvah in that way. The second thing that he gives her is two bracelets, which weigh 10 shekels. What do we remember when we think of 10 and 2? The luchot, exactly. The 10 commandments that were made on 2 tablets. The 10 commandments that were made on two tablets. And he's reminding her by saying, this is what marriage is about, having this higher mission, this higher purpose. And specifically, why did he do the 10 commandments, not the Torah, but specifically the 10 commandments that are on the 2 tablets? Because if we remember the 10 commandments that were on the 2 tablets, the luchot, how were they written on there?
Engraved.
Engraved. They were engraved. It was not, how do we usually write? Usually when you write, you have a piece of paper and you have a pen. You take the pen and the ink from the pen and you put it on the paper. The tablets were engraved in the stone. It was one entity. It wasn't 2 separate entities. And this is something that reminds us that a real, the epitome of a marriage, the goal that we're striving for in marriage is to be so united that we're united one with the other. That it's not about me and you, but we forge one bigger self of us. It's not me and you, your needs, my needs, but this merging of 2 souls that become us. And it reminds us as well that this is how we need to look at Torah and mitzvot, that it's not about Torah being something separate for us, but it's something that we become the Torah. The Torah becomes us. We become one with it, that we become in tune with what God wants of us. And this is really the messages of this week's Torah portion. We end off with one last thing, that when Rivka comes into the tent of Yitzchak, the tent of Sara, his Yitzchak's mother, there's 3 miracles that return to the tent. What are those 3 miracles? The clouds of glory, right? The clouds of glory, the candles burning, and there's a blessing on the dough, the challah dough. And these remind us of the 3 special mitzvot that a woman has, which is Neirot, Shabbos candles that we light. Her candles continued lighting from one week to the next, but the mitzvah of Shabbos candles, the mitzvah of challah, that we do hafrashat challah, we take a piece of the challah and we make a bracha, and it also reminds us of the mitzvah of kashrut, that we keep kosher, and the cloud over her tent reminds us of God's presence being in our home, which happens especially when we keep Taharat HaMishpacha, the laws of family purity, the laws of going to mikvah, because we invite God into every part of our home, our bedroom, the kitchen when we bake challah, the living room when we light the candles. We're saying, God, we want you to be a part of our lives and a part of our home. And these are the special mitzvot that women in particular have a special connection to, that we can really use to ignite our home and create from the home a special place. So this is this week's Torah portion. There's been a lot in there, and this is what we learned from it.